What's up, EJK back, and we're going to be taking a look at another game from Flash's stream, a TvP on, what's this map? Echo, Coda. Yeah. Here we go. So, TvP, interesting matchup, and we get to see the most current meta currently happening on the Korea server that will no doubt take over different kinds of professional games that have Koreans in them over the next, I don't know, couple months, half year. It's basically what happens in Korea generally happens outside of Korea after a little bit, after it has time to spread. This game, Flash is going for a command center first. He builds his first depot not at the ramp. I think the fact that he does this and that he doesn't SCV scout is because he is playing on Korea server at top 16 MMR, and at that MMR you aren't going to have no-name Grandmaster Protoss players try to cannon rush you or do an in-base proxy or do some sort of other silly shenanigan. So he doesn't have to prepare for, or he doesn't have to worry about that. If it was a different server, if this was like North America server, or even Europe to an extent, I would say that this is a little bit risque, but I think this is fine against the kind of players that he's playing against. Because you can't, he does see the probe scout come, and by that time you know that that was a gateway probe, and one of the only reasons why Protoss players scout with a gateway probe is for 2 racks. It's also to see if it's a Reaper or not. It's mainly 2 racks, I believe. And if you're afraid of a 2 racks, well, I guess any Protoss build you should be afraid of a 2 racks. So never mind that. But yeah, so like you could do a proxy 10 gate, and you could have it here, and then you can just send your probe in at that timing that is a regular gateway scout, and it would be a completely, I guess, metagame thing to do, and it would completely throw Flash off. And I think a proxy 10 gate would do a lot of damage. Maybe not kill him, maybe it would kill him, but it would definitely put the Protoss in a much better spot. One of the benefits to not SCV scouting and building your depot closer to your mineral line at the main base is that when you're going for a command center first, you generally can't afford a lot of buildings very fast. One of the things here that Flash does is he adds his 3rd barracks after his 2nd barracks completes. Now this means you're not going to have enough Marines to stop a proxy oracle. You're gonna have 5 Marines around that 5-minute 20-second mark when that oracle pops out. So Flash is just completely assuming that his opponent is going for a mothership core expand of some sorts, maybe off of 2 gas with 4 probes, or 1 gas with 3 probes. He does not give a F about a proxy oracle right now. This is a build that by no means is safe against everything, but I think versus the kind of players that he normally plays against on ladder, it is an acceptable build to do. Now the oracle that appears in a little bit is slightly fast, and you can get an oracle out this fast by either skipping a mothership core or by not making a stalker and having like 2 guys on gas and then taking a slightly later nexus. Both of them will get you an oracle out fairly fast. Both of them very different economy-wise. But I think it was you skip the mothership core and then like you still get your nexus out, and then you make an oracle straight after, because you don't have to worry about Reaper pressure. You don't have to worry about any kind of pressure basically, and so it's a good build to scouting this kind of play. just cutting your gas units to get that Oracle out a little bit faster. That puts this Protoss player in a decent spot because he got a couple kills with his Oracle. He also is catching Flash completely off guard. However, that Oracle, I believe, turned off its energy when it flew through the natural, so that's why I think it wasn't able to do additional damage, but that could have been a very scary moment for Flash for sure. I also want to note that Flash's tech lab and reactor are very fast. He had about 11 Marines, 12 if you count the Marine out on the map. That's enough for 6 Marines in each base, or 6 Marines in one base, and like a couple Marines in a bunker and around the bunker, but not nearly enough for 6 in each mineral line and then 1 in a bunker to defend against oracles. But everything turns out fine. He gets his turrets up in time. He does take SCV damage, but it's not critical. You do have to do some sort of SCV damage to slow your opponent down when going for oracles. Otherwise, this standard 10-minute-ish push usually does a lot of damage because the Oracle and the Stargate will delay your tech for like an extra minute, I believe, 45 seconds to a minute, depending on how fast you want to get that tech out. Flash's medevacs are already on the way. He rushed his factory out, by the way. There are different variations of doing a command center first, and this was the one where you play semi-greedy and you get a factory at 6 minutes and 20 seconds before your eBay, before anything else, and you really focus on tech. And I think if it's not the safest versus all-ins because you're skimping on army, but it's still a solid macro build order. I'm not gonna say it's bad or anything, but it definitely has small holes that can be what's it called? Punctured? Not punctured. Taken advantage of. Ooh, what's that word? I do not know. I give up on that. Okay, so this push comes in by Flash. He has an opportunity to do damage. However, he sees the Immortal. He sees there's enough sentries with energy that he would get force fielded off, cut off his army into small chunks so that he wouldn't be able to do much damage, and he'd end up taking a bad trade. He also doesn't have combat shields done either, and combat shields is fairly important for a very marine heavy army, believe it or not. So he, like 99% sure, he was not going to commit to an attack either way. He just wanted to kind of scare his opponent, say, hi, I'm here, and check his opponent's unit composition. In this case, we don't see a fast Colossi. We saw that Immortal come out. What Flash is doing is he's transitioning into the mid-game by building his 4th and 5th barracks very quickly, and then a 3rd command center. So what this does is it gives him a lot of army, it gives him a decent economy, but it really slacks on the upgrades. Throughout the entire game, Flash only stays on 1 eBay, which is pretty scary because there's a point in time where he checks the upgrades of the Protoss player and it's 3-3 and he's only at 1-1 and he decides to attack anyways. But I'll get more into that later. The point is, his build that he's doing is not very upgrade based, so he has to keep that in mind when looking for certain trades to take. Now, breaking down these rocks outside of his opponent's 3rd is a good move to do because it opens up pressure to his opponent's side of the map. It allows another attack path. In bio, you always want to be very mobile. He adds this, the 5th and 6th gas very early. As soon as I saw this, I was like, oh, Flash, this is too early. And he knows it too, because later on, he's going to start floating minerals and I mean gas, and he's going to immediately take guys off of gas. Just a small correction to his macro mistake, no biggie. This drop in here coming in, he drops right on top of a cannon, and the warp in is very fast. And this Protoss player does have 1-1 upgrades as well, so that these units don't do that much damage. What ends up happening is Flash is just trading off bio units for gateway units. I would say that was a fairly even trade, about 1 warp-in round of 6 gateways for like 2 medevacs and soon to be a couple widow mines, and like he got some economic damage as well, so it's alright. Flash now just put down that armory, but he did not add another engineering bay. So not only is his 1-1 done right now, but his armory hasn't even started. So his 2-2 is going to be extremely late this game. Flash doing a little bit more damage, picking off that Colossi and killing, I believe, a couple more Stalkers off. That's a fair trade, I would say. Maybe not the best for him. He does escape with some of his units. But overall, the game is very even right now, and neither player has an advantage. Oh, right here is when Flash notices he's starting to bank a lot of gas. You do need to start banking gas. You actually have to start floating it on purpose for when you start producing ghosts because they're so damn expensive, but not right now. He doesn't add his Ghost Academy on for another couple minutes. And I like what Flash is doing out on the map right now because I'm pretty sure by now he has identified his opponent as having double upgrades, and so he knows that there isn't going to be a lot of harass potential available, especially with the amount of units that he was able to pick off that Protoss army, putting guys back on gas, by the way, just when he starts to run out of gas and to correct his mineral to gas ratio. So that the Protoss player, that Phoenix was sent to scout for a potential SCV all-in to see if there's a 4th base being taken, you know, just signs of if there's an SCV pull coming or not. And Flash was able to not deny that pretty fast. Also looks for the observer right there. And this kind of drop, he's not going to try to YOLO in. What he is doing is just being active with his army. He's making sure his opponent is on his toes and staying in a defensive posture. If you're a Protoss player and you see something like this happening, you're not going to try to be thinking about like, okay, let me make a Warp Prism and try to harass my opponent because he's doing nothing. Even though this was pure pressure and it did absolutely nothing, it did take his opponent's attention away from thinking about doing other things such as being aggressive, and instead made him focus more on being defensive and making sure he doesn't get a drop caught or catching him out of position. Right there, that's where he checks his opponent has 3-3, and Flash only has his +2. That's his +2 attack right there. That's about to finish. So he's at 1-1 right now, and he still decides to go in and attack anyways. He does recognize that the trade that he did and seeing his opponent's army, that he can pick off these Colossi. They are very exposed. The Vikings don't have to worry about being clumped up when there's no Templar or Archons in play. And Flash is able to take a decent trade even though he is 4 upgrades down. And all he wants to do is trade away part of the army. He trades away a lot of the Colossi, escapes with the Vikings, and then he just backs right up. And he's trying to get rid of as many units as possible as well. He's just trying to buy as much time so that he can produce another warp-in round of units, and so that he doesn't die to a counterattack. But that right there, picking off about 5 Colossi and a lot of the Gateway army, prevents the Protoss player from being able to transition into a Colossi and High Templar army. He has to choose either Colossi or High Templar. He cannot have both. So it was a good move on Flash's part, or not really a good move, I should say, more like a good trade, a good engagement. That was a good example of an engagement where you don't win the game, but you gain an advantage from the battle that you can utilize later on. And we're going to see it happen a couple more times throughout the game until Flash has a like 20+ ghost army and his opponent has a very crappy army. Flash having about 800 gas, but you do need that gas. Ghosts are so damn expensive. He is transitioning into his Ghost Viking right now off of very crappy upgrades. So I'm going to say the idea behind this is you have enough AoE, enough ghosts in your army, that your army is strong enough to the point where you can be down 3 upgrades, but if you get killer EMPs off and if you can eliminate your opponent's splash damage, then you should be in a good position to take the fight. And so right now it's perfect. Flash is perfectly fine with just sitting back. He throws down a scan there, hoping to check his opponent's army composition. He sees it. And he sees that's Colossi Archon instead of High Templar. So he knows that he can wait a little longer. He can just chill around. He's probably, he's going to break down these rocks and he's going to go start to posture himself to be in an aggressive position. Flash's upgrades are 2-1 versus a 3-3 Protoss, probably a 3-1-3 Protoss. +1 attack on shields should have been done by now if you're chronoing it out, or if you're even bothering to get it at all. What Flash is doing right now is he keeps scanning to check where his opponent's army is, and he just wants to keep applying pressure like he's been doing throughout this entire game with those medevac drops, with the actually, it's just with most of the medevac drops, and then he did the medevac drops with the Viking. He does another kind of fake medevac drop, but it does get scouted out. Even if it didn't get scouted out, I'm sure he would have scanned into the main base to check if there was an opening for him. Gets good EMPs here. The Protoss player was caught out of position, most likely because he didn't have an observer of some sorts. And Flash traded a couple Vikings for Colossi, but his opponent lost all of his Stalkers. And even though Flash is down a bunch of upgrades, these EMPs are just doing a lot of work to this Protoss army. And it doesn't matter if you have a lot of upgrades. If you get hit by a couple EMPs, the same can be said for Storm as well. If you get hit by Storms, you're as good as dead. And Flash taking a very good engagement over here. Both players do have their 4th bases. Flash is almost on his 5th, so he's about a base up. He has a slight economic advantage. He also has a very large bank as well. And so now he did take a much better engagement. He left with a larger portion of his army. So the next remax that he does is going to be a lot faster than his opponent. So currently right now, he doesn't have to apply too much pressure right now. He just has to wait. The time is on his side, max out on a very strong ghost-based army, and go for the killing blow. He already has like 16 ghosts. That's a ridiculous amount of ghosts, I'm not gonna lie. And another good thing about staying passive over here is that you're accumulating ghost energy as well. If you attack straight up with ghosts and you cloak them, you're not going to have enough energy to EMP. You have to wait a little bit for them to get like 25 energy to cloak, and then, more energy for them to stay cloaked, and then to be able to use EMPs and snipe behind this as well. And the Protoss army is very small right now because of the good engagement that Flash took the one before. And really, he had basically won the game. Let's see here. He got a good EMP. He traded out a lot of the Stalkers and a lot of the Colossi, a lot of the gas-based army of the Protoss player for his less expensive bio, which is always the way that bio players want to trade their army. And it was just a matter of how is he going to win the game from here. The game was pretty much sealed, and he just had to remax and win the game. Simple as that. Some things to note is that the Protoss player did not make a Warp Prism. I want to say that's partially because of all of the pressure that he was under, also the fact that Flash was taking very small engagements, so that I'm sure the Protoss player did not have a lot of money lying around, especially to afford 200 minerals for a Warp Prism. He also has an Immortal. Okay, that's just one Immortal that he made earlier in his army. But he also has been constantly making and chronoing out Colossi as well. And then he has the Archons here. So definitely the style that the Protoss player was doing favors a delayed Storm. I know that's not the case on North America and EU, these players love to get their Storm and love to do High Templar flanks, which I think is a much better way of playing than going for delayed Storm like that, because then you can just take good engagements like the one Flash took. These kinds of openings pop up. But if you have to deal with High Templar, it becomes a lot harder to take good engagements because it becomes a very delicate dance between the High Templars. High Templars make every Terran life much harder. I like how he moves away that SCV like that. Doesn't lose SCV. Oh yeah, final thought. I also want to say that there was a TVT and another TVT that I wanted to do, but the person who uploaded the VODs, he did not have, he had the first half of the TVT Biotank game, and then he had the second half of the TVT Mech game, which I wanted the full game. So I'm gonna keep looking for a copy of that, but for now I'm just gonna be bouncing around and looking for high quality games that he played, solid macro games that could benefit from this kind of analysis. Until next time, guys.